Postmodern Condition by Jean-Francois Lyotard. 4. The nature of the social bond, the modern alternative. If we wish to discuss knowledge in the most highly developed contemporary society, we must answer the preliminary question of what methodological representation to apply to that society. Simplifying to the extreme, it is fair to say that in principle, there have been, at least over the last half-century, two basic representational models for society. Either society forms a functional whole, or it is divided in two. An illustration of the first model is suggested by Talcott Parsons in his school, and of the second, by the Marxist current. This methodological split, which defines two major kinds of discourse on society, has been handed down from the 19th century. The idea that society forms an organic whole, in the absence of which it ceases to be a society, dominated the minds of the founders of the French school. Added detail was supplied by functionalism. It took yet another turn in the 1950s with Parsons's conception of society as a self-regulating system. The theoretical and even material model is no longer the living organism. It is provided by cybernetics, which, during and after the Second World War, expanded the model's applications. In Parsons's work, the principle behind the system is still, if I may say so, optimistic. It corresponds to the stabilization of the growth economies and societies of abundance under the aegis of a moderate welfare state. In the work of contemporary German theorists, system theory is technocratic, even cynical, not to mention despairing. The harmony between the needs and hopes of individuals or groups in the functions guaranteed by the system is now only a secondary component of its functioning. The true goal of the system, the reason it programs itself like a computer, is the optimization of the global relationship between input and an output. In other words, performativity. Even when its rules are in the process of changing and innovations are occurring, even when its dysfunctions inspire hope and lead to belief in an alternative, even then what is actually taking place is only an internal readjustment, and its result can be no more than an increase in the system's viability. The only alternative to this kind of performance improvement is entropy, or decline. Here again, while avoiding the simplifications inherent in a sociology of social theory, it is difficult to deny at least a parallel between this hard, technocratic version of society and the ascetic effort that was demanded of the most highly developed industrial societies in order to make them competitive and thus optimize their rationality. Within the framework of the resumption of economic world war in the 1960s, even taking into account the massive displacement intervening between the thought of a man like Comte and the thought of Luhmann, we can discern a common conception of the social. Society is a unified totality, a unicity. Parsons formulates this clearly. The most essential condition of successful dynamic analysis is a continual and systematic reference of every problem to the state of the system as a whole. A process or set of conditions either contributes to the maintenance or development of the system, or it is dysfunctional in that it detracts from the integration, effectiveness, etc. of the system. The technocrats also subscribe to this idea. Once its credibility, it has the means to become a reality, and that is all the proof it needs. This is what Horkheimer called the paranoia of reason. But this realism of systemic self-regulation in this perfectly sealed circle of facts and interpretations can be judged paranoid only if one has or claims to have at one's disposal a viewpoint that is in principle immune from their allure. This is the function of the principle of class struggle in theories of society, based on the work of Marx. Traditional theory is always in danger of being incorporated into the programming of the social whole as a simple tool for the optimization of its performance. This is because its desire for a unitary and totalizing truth lends itself to the unitary and totalizing practice of the system's managers. Critical theory, based on a principle of dualism and wary of syntheses and reconciliations, should be in a position to avoid this fate. What guides Marxism, then, is a different model of society and a different conception of the function of the knowledge that can be produced by society and acquired from it. This model was born of the struggles accompanying the process of capitalism's encroachment upon traditional civil societies. There is insufficient space here to chart the vicissitudes of these struggles, which fill more than a century of social, political, and ideological history. We will have to content ourselves with a glance at the balance sheet, which is possible for us to tally today. Now that their fate is known, in countries with liberal or advanced liberal management, the struggles and their instruments have been transformed into regulators of the system. In communist countries, the totalizing model and its totalitarian effect have made a comeback in the name of Marxism itself, and the struggles in question have simply been deprived of the right to exist. Everywhere, the critique of political economy and its correlate, the critique of alienated society, are used in one way or another as aids in programming the system. Of course, certain minorities, such as the Frankfurt School or the group Socialisme ou Barbarie, preserved and refined the critical model in opposition to this process. But the social foundation of the principle of division, or class struggle, was blurred to the point of losing all of its radicality. We cannot conceal the fact that the critical model, in the end, lost its theoretical standing and was reduced to the status of a utopia or hope, a token protest raised in the name of man or reason or creativity, or again of some social category, such as the third world or the students, on which is conferred in extremis the henceforth improbable function of critical subject. The sole purpose of this schematic reminder has been to specify the problematic in which I intend to frame the question of knowledge in advanced industrial societies. For it is impossible to know what the state of knowledge is, in other words, the problems its development and distribution are facing today, without knowing something of the society within which it is situated. And today, more than ever, knowing about that society involves, first of all, choosing what approach the inquiry will take, and that necessarily means choosing how society can answer. One can decide that the principal role of knowledge is as an indispensable element in the functioning of society, and act in accordance with that decision, only if one has already decided that society is a giant machine. Conversely, one can count on its critical function and orient its development and distribution in that direction, only after it has been decided that society does not form an integrated whole, but remains haunted by a principle of opposition. The alternative seems clear. It is a choice between the homogeneity and the intrinsic duality of the social, between functional and critical knowledge. But the decision seems difficult or arbitrary. It is tempting to avoid the decision altogether by distinguishing two kinds of knowledge. One, the positivist kind, would be directly applicable to technologies bearing on men and materials, and would lend itself to operating as an indispensable productive force within the system. The other, the critical, reflexive, or hermeneutic kind, by reflecting directly or indirectly on values or aims, would resist any such recuperation